Hello, movie and TV fans. Episode 7 of The Changeling premiered on Friday, October 6th, and wow. They really brought the introspective drama with the full backstory of Lillian, Apollo's mom, played by Adina Porter, who gave an Emmy worthy performance in this one person episode. Here, we really see her put her heart and soul into this performance, and we find out what happened at the Elk Hotel, what happened to Brian West, Apollo's dad, and strangely, we see William getting his big pimping on with Greta, who we first saw in episode 5. Why was he there? What was his role? And why did Lillian and Charles Blackwood sign their real names in the guest book? On this review, I'm going to answer these questions and a couple more. So please make sure you follow and subscribe for more guru content. So let's get into it. Episode 7, titled Stormy Weather and What a Storm It Was. The episode was very similar to the first scene in episode 1 in 1825 when the Quakers, who are presumably Brian West's ancestors, I'm trying to make this connection here, came over from Norway during the storm and the mysterious creature appeared then and now in episode 7 at the hotel, where we see Lillian kind of interacting with it in the mirror during her reflection. Now, the hotel was also not real. The hotel was not in operation, and when Lillian first went back, and the events that we see taking place were in her mind, right? Crazy. Much respect for her to going into this abandoned building like she did and going through these memories, digging up those past traumas and past bodies literally are never easy to do, and she appeared to handle it with much strength and grace. Now we see the derelict building when she first walks in, and then again at the end when it's withered in age, but then it flips back to how she remembers it. So why did Lillian go to the hotel? Lillian went to the hotel to unmake a deal she made with the devil and for her own forgiveness, which was in that room 205, because she specifically asked for it. Now, the story Lillian told us fills us in on what we think happened to Brian, even though they told the story in an out of order, twisted way. We see Lillian literally bash Brian's head in when she found him drowning Apollo and later revealed that she put Brian's body in a suitcase or appeared to, but we actually don't see that. Only scenes that we see are from earlier episodes of Lillian standing on the pier with a red suitcase and then that same suitcase at the bottom of East River, and we have the implied that that's what she did with the body because she had blood on her. She looked like she had been into a fight, but if in the scene that they did show when she hit Brian in the back of the head, it wasn't much of a fight. It was like she hit him, we seen the blood splatter, and then he must have went down. So how did she get these cuts, bruises, and blood on her? And was that even her blood? Because if she would have had to cut the body up. So there's still some missing parts to the story that we don't know, but we're trying to put it together. So the question is, was Brian's body in a suitcase? If so, where did she chop the body up? And did the Elk Hotel clerk Lester help her? And also, was that even Lester or Charles? Like, what's going on with this guy? He looks like Charles. They call him Lester. We don't know. Now, the timeline of events show that Brian and Lillian broke up when Brian found the hotel receipt from the Elk Hotel, but Lillian claimed she didn't know where the receipt came from. Was this a lie? Did Brian plant the receipt on her? In the clip, he says presumably Lillian and Charles' first encounter was early when they first got together. Now, I believe the scenes with the prostitute was a reenactment and was really Lillian, and for a short time, she had to make ends meet, and so she was turning the tricks. And maybe was working with the person that we seen, which was William. And she originally met Lester or Charles, if that's his name, when he saved her from being abused by either William or Brian, like we see unfold on the episode. So when did she actually meet Charles Blackwood? Was it there at the Elk Hotel? I said in my previous video, those lawyer jobs aren't easy to get especially when they're demanding their career work. So you often need to know someone to get them. And now we know how she got the job. She got the hookup. Her boss was her baby daddy. And we found out in the last scene that Charles did sign in there after her on the hotel guest book. So the theories were true about Charles being Apollo's dad. Now, the tricky part for me was that the Elk Hotel's clerk, Lester, and, just him looking like Charles Blackwood. Now, they didn't say they were there at the same time, but it could have been before he became a lawyer, just like the modeling job. It could have been a scam, right? We didn't see this guy's law degree. He might not have actually been a lawyer. He could have just opened a law firm. I know it sounds crazy, right? So how could he be the lawyer and the clerk? Now, IMDb has the actor listed in 2 episodes, but his character name is not listed, only his real name. So if it was him, we don't know. Either way, Lily and Charles slept together, and Charles is really Apollo's father. And all I can say is, I told you so. So in essence, the Elk Hotel holds 2 secrets: where Lillian met the real father of Apollo, and it is also the place where Lillian ran to after presumably murdering Brian. At the beginning of this episode, she said she had came there to undo the deal she made with the dark spirit, which is the sea spirit associated with bad storms, and seemingly the same one we saw in the first episode that helped the ship cross the oceans. We hear the original deal she made when she said, please let her get away with this heinous crime. Now, we assumed it was killing Brian because Brian was a police officer, and it's a tough call in New York City, but it could have been of the misleading and the lies about who Apollo's father actually was. So I got some theories here, and let's get into some of them. Is Brian really dead? Was his body really in the suitcase, or was it the changeling like a lot of us originally thought? My first clue is the color of the smoke seen in this episode. We usually see the smoke blue, especially when it's around Apollo. In this episode, they showed the white smoke. Now, it looked like maybe, Brian from the flashback, he tried to drown Apollo or maybe burn the apartment down, but that didn't seem like it would have been like a thicker gray type of smoke. So we don't know what this white smoke is, but it definitely means some sort of different type of magic. And so the next thing they brought up, or next theory, was that the narrator of the point of view of Lester the clerk mentioned that there was a trans woman who was found strangled in a gold sequins dress after 2 weeks. Now, was this the same dress Lillian was wearing when she was, pursuing her singing career, and that one that we see her change into? Lillian could have somehow either met or lured Brian there, did something to him, then dressed his corpse up in his gold dress and wig, leading the clerk or Lester, if he was in on it, to make it believe that Brian was the unidentified trans woman in just a John Doe case. Now, they don't say when this happened, but the prostitute that we see in the show, who we think is Angelica from what the caption said, was being abused and strangled by William. Lester came in and helped her, and now who's to say that is either 2 things: that either William had done that before in the past and returned to the crime scene to do it again, or that was, like I said, a really reenactment, and that was actually Lillian, and that's how she got close with Lester or Charles Blackwood. We also see Lillian walk past the room, and there is a man lying in the bed. Now, at first glance, it didn't look like Brian, but she puts the dress on, the gold dress, and then she comes back, and then it looked like the guy turned into Brian in the bed. Now, the guys in the hallway yell at her and say he's contagious, but we see him with all these black spots all over his body, which is something that, AIDS and HIV patients or positive people would have had at that time. And a younger Lillian would have been visiting that hotel around the beginning of the AIDS epidemic. It looks to be around 1977. But I believe when she checked in, there was another date on the guest book that said 1982. So, could be a couple things. But I felt like that was a really, really deep scene when she was talking to the man in the bed, and it was confusing because was that Brian? Was that not Brian? And if it was him, is that where he ended up? All we know is that Lillian did tell Apollo to go visit his grave, but I feel like Apollo could find some records on his dad, but he just hasn't done that. So we still don't have the answers. Hopefully, we'll get some soon. Now, those were big reveals because we all been wondering what happened to Apollo's dad and why did he leave. But I think the biggest reveal that we got that connects us to the main storyline that's going on, which is Emma's, is that her sister went through the same thing that Emma went through. Now we see as Lillian is walking to the Elk Hotel, there's a woman who's in an argument with a man, and the caption said she's screaming out, "That's not a baby." And come to find out, as the camera zooms in, we see it's Emma's sister. Now, it was a couple of fast clips and it wasn't very long, but we can tell that was her. Now, this connects the dots to when Emma told her sister that she learned how to raise a child. We assumed that it was because Emma's older sister raised her, but not even thinking that she had a child of her own. She is a midwife and she does help with birth, so has gone through it, experienced it with children, and apparently dealt with a changeling situation. Now, that would explain how she knew where her sister was going to be at on the ferry, where to flash the lights at, and where to get the response to push her overboard so that way she could get the help that she needed with Cal. Emma told her to go with her, but I'm guessing she may have already been and didn't want to go back. And if you want to look deeper, that could have, because of what her sister went through, that could have been the whole reason why she even went to Brazil in the first place, to get this sort of magical powers to help her sister get her kid back as well. So the next one, was Apollo replaced by the Changeling? From episode 1, we start to notice something happened to Apollo when he was home alone while his mother was at work. Now, the audience assumed the spirits visited Apollo and he was changed out by the Changeling. But now, with the information from this episode, that might not be the case. The real twist could have been that Apollo was not changed in a physical sense like baby Brian was, but literally in a literal sense by being passed off as Brian's son when he was really not. Now, if Apollo was the product of an affair, that was the secret that the mother had. Now, Apollo seems to follow Brian's footsteps through character and role when we see him go through the same situation that kind of Brian was in, even saying things to baby Brian that we've seen as the audience his father said to him. And also at this point, I'm wondering if Apollo has ever seen a picture of Brian or of who the audience knows as Brian. There was no pictures in that box. There's no pictures around the mom's apartment, or not even any pictures in Apollo's of him and his dad. And the scenes where Apollo did see him, he would have been too young to remember what Brian looked like. So we don't know if he knows what we know Brian is to look like. So the next one I have, was the Elk Hotel actually there? In the episode, this episode was a flashback down memory lane, and we see at the end that the hotel was abandoned. The actual scenes were flashbacks from when Lillian first went there. And we did find out that the old hotel had been there for over 100 years. Lester was at the front desk and says that the sign-in book has centuries of names on it. The old hotel was originally used by immigrants who originally came to the U.S. through Ellis Island. Now, at first, I kind of thought maybe Brian's family owned this hotel or something like that, but it seemed like maybe when they came over, I guess they went to Syracuse, maybe they came to New York, or he came to New York, he might have stayed there. And so there has to be some sort of other connection with Brian and the Elk Hotel that maybe they just haven't revealed yet. And so also maybe the hotel was a portal or place, since it has such a history, where they made that, where the creature from the ship, kind of can connect, like it's a doorway, which would explain how Lillian was able to see the creature in the mirror, this would explain how Lillian was able to see the creature in the mirror. Now, this story is a dark fairy tale, and this hotel could have been a gateway or a door. So we don't know. What do you guys think? So the next one was William and Greta. Now, the reason we see the attacker or prostitute as William is because William and Brian are from presumably the same family, right? William does say he has family from Norway, and we never hear Brian is from Norway, but we can assume that he does have family from Norway. Now, there could be a possibility that Lillian thought that she killed Brian when hit him on the head, but it possibly could be that just like how William took that beating from Cal and her people and did not die, it could have been the same that it could be the same that Brian did not die. And that's why he was able to drop the box off to Apollo when he was older. The fight scene with the William and the prostitute seemed kind of random, right? It kind of seemed it was above Lillian as she was in the apartment 205. It kind of looked like, we could see through the floor and see them fighting. It kind of looked like it was in her head, like she was playing those sequences back. And just kind of what I was saying before kind of changed out the people. Now, could the fighting scene really be what happened between Lillian and Brian at night? That she left and went to stay at the hotel with Charles Blackwood, or where she had first met Charles Blackwood, who we think is Lester. And maybe it was after she began realizing that Brian was abusing her and she was afraid, and that's why the prostitute said to Lillian that she didn't exist. Now, we did find out that Lillian had a fear of, for some reason, no one finding her, because Brian did tell her in the past that he could have locked her up and that no one would have come looking for her because she didn't exist. Basically, that she was a nobody. And since her boss paid her so much attention, from what we seen, there obviously was some interest there or some history. And so it kind of, now we kind of get to see how they built that history, if that was her in that position. So there were many takeaways from this Changeling episode 7. There is one more episode, and it's called Battle of the Island. Now, there's been some controversy already around it because the episode is only 29 minutes, where each other episode in season 1 has been between 45 and 57 minutes. Now, the episode description says William, aka Kindergarten's Fury, rips across the island, sending Cal Apollo into darkness, and the picture cap shows Apollo rowing a boat somewhere. We don't know where, though. Presumably back to the city or back to the island. So can't wait to see what happens, and of course can't wait to talk about it. So until then, make sure you follow, like, and subscribe for more guru content, and of course let's talk about it in the comments.